Shower yourself with a new sensation, new refreshing Shield. Feel the blast. The high-energy beat of Shield's unique skin-vigorating formula. Refreshment that'll turn you around. New refreshing Shield.
Stacia Strand and News Center 13, where the news comes first 24 hours a day.
Hello again, I'm Tim Russert, and this is Meet the Press, live from New York City. Our issue this Sunday, the New York presidential primary. Our guest, the governor of the Empire State, Mario Cuomo.
From NBC News, this is Meet the Press with Tim Russert.
It's down to New York, Clinton or Brown. Or is it? In December, Governor Cuomo said he would not seek the presidency because he did not have a state budget. Well, now he has one. Will that change his plans? Who will win in New York on Tuesday? And what about the tone of the campaign, now and against George Bush? These questions and more for a man our viewers should know I worked with for 22 months, 8 years ago in Albany, New York. Governor Cuomo, welcome to Meet the Press.
It's good to be here.
And joining me this morning, Lisa Myers and John Chancellor, both of NBC News. Governor, on December 20th, you said you could not be a candidate for the presidency because you did not have a state budget. You now have a state budget. Will you be a candidate for the presidency?
No, I said something else on December 20th. I said that New Hampshire had been set as the practical deadline by the realities and by our national chairman, Ron Brown. December 20th was the day for the New Hampshire primaries. I also said that if you didn't go into New Hampshire, you probably ought not to consider going in later because it would be disruptive. That was the national chairman's position. I think he was right. What happened was I said no. I tried very hard to get a budget as early as I could get it. I didn't get it from the Republicans or the Democrats until only April 1st, and by then it was academic. There was only one or two large primaries left, and it would be nothing but disruptive for anybody to consider going in at that point. So what I said on December 20th was realized. I was out on December 20th, and as a practical matter, that kept me out altogether. That's the way the national chairman saw it at the time. That's the way I saw it, and I think it's right. The process much too far advanced now for anybody to make some dramatic last-minute entrance, nor is it necessary. You have two candidates, both of whom are capable of being excellent presidents of the United States, and certainly both of them capable of beating President Bush.
So if something happened and we went to a convention and there was a draft, would you accept it?
The brokered convention idea and questions about it I don't like, because the more you spend talking about it, the more you suggest to people that it is plausible or that it ought to happen. It is not plausible. In all likelihood, Governor Clinton, whatever happens in New York, will be a first ballot winner. As I understand the arithmetic, all he needs is about 40% of the votes from here on in. That's not to say that it is academic for New Yorkers and others to express themselves, but as a practical matter, he is the winner on the first ballot. What I'm interested in is, candidly, not so much Clinton or Brown or someone else. I'm interested in what the Democrats are going to offer the people of the United States as a course different from the one that President Bush is offering. President Bush is saying the ship of state should continue on its current course. That is directly toward the rocks. We all know it. What I want is a plan that's different, that diverts this course, that gets us back to investment-led growth, that gets us back to the opportunity that allows me to be governor. That's not happening. It can only happen if a Democrat wins. So my interest is in seeing a Democrat win. The best way to do that, Clinton, Brown, pick one of them, get George Mitchell and Tom Foley at a table with them right away, say, let us make a plan for America. I'm not interested so much in what your draft status was or whether or not you smoked marijuana 20 years ago. That may all be relevant to the media. What I want to know is how you're going to put people to work in New York City, in Utah. How are you going to deal with the Japanese? How are you going to invest in people, in infrastructure? How are you going to do everything that we all know must be done and none of us is talking about or dealing with? So, forget about brokered convention, possibilities of white knights appearing. Pick Clinton, pick Brown. As soon as you can, sit down with your Congress people and say, here's the plan for America. Now, we're not doing that. America knows it. The passengers on the ship of state headed for the rocks, they know that the officers are quarreling among themselves over stupidities. Ross Perot knows it. Ross Perot is thinking about a legal political mutiny. He's thinking about going to those angry passengers and saying, hey, look, these guys are going to create a disaster. Here's my plan for America. If he comes with a plan, he can shock you because no one else will have one. Not Bush. The Democrats don't have it yet. If Perot comes up with a plan first, he can surprise you. That should not happen. Pick Clinton, pick Brown, make it clear early. Let's sit down with our congressional leaders. Let's make a plan for America. Make it specific and understandable. That's what I'm interested in.
You already voted by absentee ballot.
Yes.
Who did you pick, Clinton or Brown?
We do that confidentially, Tim. You've forgotten. You used to work here. But, you know, you put it in an envelope and you place...
well, you like to make tough choices.
That's a nice question. Not terribly clever, but a nice question.
Well, one person you did not mention today was Senator Paul Tsongas. His name is still on the ballot in New York. He was endorsed by Newsday, the paper. Your state chairman, John Marino, said he will be a factor.
I think he will be, yeah.
Do you think he might re-enter the race?
I think...
Should he be considered by New York voters?
I think Senator Tsongas's popularity with me and with a lot of people is a kind of confirmation of the point I'm making. The reason he was so popular was that he was talking realistically about a plan for action. You know, a real way to get private investment, to get public investment, to invest in human beings, to do something different because Japan's beating us, Germany's beating us, everybody knows it. So his insistence on the merits and his attempt to stay away from the superficial issues is what made him popular. I'm not good at the polls, as you know, but he'll do well in New York City, and New York State, astoundingly well, especially since he hasn't campaigned and he's declared that he's out. He'll get double digits at least. And yes, he will be a factor because what he will do is he will deteriorate the victory for whoever wins. He might even drag it under 50%. So yeah, he's a factor. He is a living embodiment of the unhappiness, the fear and concern of the passengers on this ship of state because they know you're heading for the rocks. And when they vote for Tsongas in this election, that's what they'll be telling you.
One last question on this series.
And the ones who don't vote will be telling you the same thing.
You said you will do anything you can to help elect a Democratic president.
If it's legal and not sinful.
If the nominee of the party comes to you and says, Mario Cuomo, I want you to be my vice president.
If it's legal, not sinful, and not silly. That one is probably in the silly category.
Would you accept?
I'm not, you should know, Tim, I don't want to sound intimate. I wouldn't be very
Please
good.
Don't.
I wouldn't be very good as a vice president.
Lisa.
Governor, one of the biggest issues in this state has been Jerry Brown's statement that if nominated, he would want Jesse Jackson as his vice presidential running mate. Do you think it would be in the best interest of the Democratic Party to have Jesse Jackson on the ticket?
I think he has been a great voice on many of the most important issues this country faces. And I think when Jesse Jackson chose not to run, you lost a great deal. You didn't hear the case for the cities. You didn't hear the case for the deprived. And this country cannot make it unless it reaches those decaying citizens in the decaying cities. My city, where I still live. So Jesse Jackson's voice on the issues is very, very important. Whether he should be vice president or not is up to one person and one group. The candidate for the presidency, selected by the Democrats, and the convention working together. That's the way that judgment ought to be made. If they decided on Jesse Jackson, I would have no difficulty with that choice.
But as you know, it has caused a great deal of adverse reaction within the Jewish community. Do you think their concerns about Jesse Jackson are warranted?
I think that the relationship between Jesse Jackson and the Jewish community needs a lot more attention and treatment by Jesse Jackson and the Jewish community. I think his statements about Hymietown, etc., created a rupture that is going to be very, very difficult to cure completely. Knowing Jesse and knowing the Jewish community quite well, I think it is a curable situation, but it's going to take a lot of time. The practical reality now is you put that together with other positions by the Reverend Jackson that are perceived as less sensitive on the Zionism issue than most Jewish people in this state would like to see, and there is a problem, but it is a problem that's manageable.
As you know, there's a news story this morning that Governor Clinton had received an induction notice at the time he applied for the ROTC, something he failed to disclose in days of questioning about his draft record. Isn't this another example of the kind of evasion that has given voters reason to doubt Governor Clinton's honesty?
I haven't read it. I haven't studied it. I really don't know. And I'm not going to dismiss it cavalierly and say the media shouldn't talk about it. But for God's sakes, are you talking about the 100 economists who told us this week what we need right away is $50 billion for cities and states, even if it creates a small increase in the deficit as long as you have a plan to patch it up 5 years from now. I'm not saying that what you're talking about is irrelevant, but is it as important to the passengers on this ship of state as $50 billion for the cities, for roads and bridges, for schools? Is it as important to us to know what the candidates did while they were in the East? What there is about this exotic characteristic of Jerry Brown? Is that as significant as what are you going to do about trade with Japan? What I'm saying to you is that one of the things I'd like to do now that I'm free is bang away at the message. I've said from the beginning, the message is more important than the messenger. All we're talking about is the messenger in the most superficial way. What his married life is, what did he do when he was in school. That's your business. I don't like it. I would rather talk about the economy.
Jack?
You know why people keep asking you if you're going to run for president? Because you sound like one. You're always talking about the ship of state as though you were the captain. You're talking about investment-led growth. You're talking about Japan and Germany. You're full of programs and plans. That's why people in our business are always saying you're going to be president.
No, John.
How do you deal with that?
Well, when you invited me, I assumed you wanted me to talk about these things. If you want me to sound like a sheriff, we'll go have a cup of coffee, and I'll sound like a sheriff.
All right, let me ask you, Sheriff.
Yeah, sure.
Why is this such a mean-spirited year? They voted in New Hampshire just 6 weeks ago, and it seems like about 6 years that we've been going through with charges and countercharges, and yes, a lot of personal stuff about the candidates. But is there something going on in America that has brought the turnout way down, that has made this such a sour year?
Too hard a question for me, and I'm going to butcher it because I'm going to try to do it very short. 2 answers. I think one is long range. I have been saying for all the time I've been in public life that the most trenchant observation made about our civilization here is from a song in The Graduate. Where have you gone, Joe DiMaggio? A nation turns its lonely heart to you. That emptiness, no more Martin Luther King, no more John Kennedy, no more strong orthodoxy from the churches, nothing really to wrap yourself around and to believe, nothing uplifting. That syndrome, John, has been at work for the last 20 years, a kind of gradual deterioration of the spirit. Then President Reagan, a wonderful human being, but he came with George Bush and he said to the people, hey, look, don't worry about helping those poor people in the streets. You can't do it. Don't worry about welfare and all this compassion talk. It doesn't work. Government isn't supposed to solve your problems. You're on your own. It was a callous America. He said it genially and in an affable way, and people didn't notice. But what he was really saying is, there's no point in trying to help these people. That produced a hardness. It produced an independence and a kind of macho quality, but also a hardness. Now, people are disgusted with a government that has failed them every possible way. My popularity is way down. Why? They see a budget that raises their taxes and cuts their services. I don't blame them a bit. I don't blame the people in my family for saying, Mario, that's not what we wanted from you. We wanted you to give those little kids in South Jamaica the kind of break you had. The federal government is a disaster. The Democrats are in force in Congress. All they have to do is sit down with Bill Clinton and Jerry Brown right now and say, here are 5 bills we guarantee you we will pass when you're president. One starts us on our way to health care by reducing costs nationwide. One is investments in the cities and states. The conservative and Democrat, Republican, liberal economists all say $50 billion for the states and cities. You got it. Here are 5 bills. Go out there and tell America that when you win, we, the Democratic Congress, will pass these bills and the Republicans won't be able to stop us. We only need 1-vote victories. Forget about 2/3. Now our excuse is Bush will veto. They can't veto with you, Jerry, with you, Bill. Here's our plan for America. The heck with draft notices, girlfriends, floozies, Annapolis. Here we are, a plan for America. You win. You don't do that, and look out for Ross Perot.
Governor, it's time to take a break. We'll be back in just a moment with Governor Mario Cuomo of New York.
Meet the Press is sponsored by the Archer Daniels Midland Company. ADM, supermarket to the world.
But I could not believe it when I ate it. It was just, they're just absolutely wonderful.
I've learned to like them quite a bit. We take them home and eat them pretty regularly.
They were really delicious. I like them.
They're just good.
Oh, they'd get a 10 for sure.
They're talking about it in the Midwest.
It's quick, I know it's nutritious. It's going to be good for me. And Bob has a high cholesterol problem, so they really solve a lot of problems for our whole family.
And soon it may be in the lips of people everywhere.
If he says it's good, it is really good.
Yeah, I like them.
It's the Midland Harvest brand Harvest Burger, an all-vegetable patty from the Archer Daniels Midland Company. Harvest burgers are low in fat, low in calories, free of cholesterol, and contain dietary fiber. Qualities that are in growing demand by today's health-conscious consumers. And what are people saying about the taste? We couldn't have said it better ourselves. ADM, supermarket to the world.
We're back with Mario Cuomo, the governor of New York. Governor, let's talk about one of these issues. It's a tough one. Senator Warren Rudman, Republican from New Hampshire, has quit the Senate. Will serve out his term, but not run for re-election, saying that the biggest problem is the raw political power of the retired middle class. That entitlements are going to account for about 65% of this country's budget. And when you take 13% for defense and 17% for interest on the public debt, you have 5% remaining for the rest of government. What would you advise Governor Clinton and Governor Brown and Senator Tsongas to say about entitlements? Do we need means testing?
Well, I think this is an easy question for governors. Every governor I know, from California to Rhode Island, Democrats and Republicans alike, are required by law to balance their budgets. There may be one or two exceptions in the whole country. Federal government is not. Because we have to make balanced budgets, we deal with everything, including entitlements. I'm cutting Medicaid over $1 billion this year. I'm not necessarily happy about all of it. I cut education at the base 4.5%. What's a better entitlement than education? There is this magic that's at work politically in this country that governors can deal with entitlements, make all those hard decisions, and get beaten up, as we do. Of course, we're all down in the polls. But when you get to Washington, they say, oh, we're not allowed to talk about entitlements. They'll kill us politically. Well, then if you can't take the heat, get out of Washington.
But when Senator Tsongas tried to do that in Florida, well, Governor Clinton clobbered him over the head.
Well, here's the answer I would give. If you're going to be the President of the United States or a congressperson, you're going to need to make sacrifices in this country because you need an immense amount of wealth to deal with investments in people, in infrastructure, in programs. There's no getting around that. They'll play nice games about, we're going to take care of the health care problem by being more efficient. That's going to raise billions of dollars. It won't cost anybody any more to have national health. Forget that. Everybody knows that's not true. Every group is going to have to make sacrifices. The rich people who have done so well over the last 10 years obviously have to contribute more. Nobody's unhappy about that, not even the rich people, as long as you're sure that the money gets invested properly. The poor people, the poorest people, if you have welfare programs that don't work well, you have to correct them. That's going to be a stringency on the bottom. If the Medicaid is a little excessive here and there, you have to deal with that. And the middle class as well. And the middle class is ready. Some of the people said, let's have a middle class tax cut right now. That's all they were going to do. The Democrats were going to give you a middle class tax cut. The Republicans, a rich people's tax cut. My position, I said they're both a joke. You know, to say you're going to give a middle-class tax cut of $400, but not do anything about education, not do anything about getting them jobs, not do anything about drugs or the cities, that's an absolute joke. The middle class knew it. You didn't hear them complaining when the middle-class tax cut went down for the Democrats. You didn't hear them blaming the Republicans, so they're ready to make sacrifices too. We're all going to have to do it. The biggest sacrifice is the people at the top. That is as it should be. That's not rich against poor. That's common sense.
Let's talk about welfare reform. Excuse me. Governor Clinton has a proposal which would give welfare recipients more help on the front end, but say after 2 years you either get a job, you do community service, or you lose your benefits. Do you support that?
That's the law. It's funny. I love talking about welfare because nobody knows anything about it. Here's the current law, in my state at least. AFDC is the federal program, mostly women with children. Home relief, if you're an individual in my state, we believe, as a matter of Constitution, Michigan is different, that every needy person has to be taken care of, even if you don't have a baby. Okay, but the law in my state is, if you cannot work, we'll take care of you. But if you can and you refuse to, number one, in the private sector, and if not in the private sector, work on a public project to earn your grant. If you refuse to, you're off the rolls. That's the law in our state, and that should be.
But that is not the law in most states, and certainly most states don't have the 2-year cutoff. Do you agree with that, at least in theory?
In my state, you could not. You see, in my state, you could not drop a legitimate, needy person off the rolls. So that if a woman with a child after 2 years, although she was begging and although she was trying, could not find work, you could not say to her, nor should you, even if you were free to, you could not say to her, okay, sorry, you didn't find a job, we gave you 2 years, you're out. Go starve, and your child with you. That would be a sin, I think, but that's academic. In our Constitution in the state of New York, and I'm very proud of it, it says you must take care of the needy. Now, if she is offered a job and refuses, then she's no longer needy in our definition. Then you can drop her from the rolls, and that's fair too. Okay?
Let me ask you about you and a number of other politicians this year talking about a brokered convention as though it were to be run by a crooked law firm.
You had to say lawyer, right?
But what about an open convention? Open conventions gave us presidents like Roosevelt and Eisenhower. Is there anything intrinsically wrong with going back to the system of open conventions?
No, I think that's an interesting way that you put it when you mention Roosevelt. I think there was nothing terribly wrong with the Roosevelt idea. Adlai Stevenson, 1952. I think there's nothing terribly wrong with the primary idea, and you should pick one. In 1952, you didn't have a primary system like this one. Governor Roosevelt then sat in Albany, let Al Smith and others scheme for him, and when it came time, after the convention, he made a few big speeches. And that was it. There were no primaries, maybe 3 or 4. But now you have a different system. It is pervasive with primaries. The real test is primaries. To go to a brokered convention now is to say we tried this very democratic process. We put the best Democrats we had, the most courageous, the most willing. We let them get beaten up for all these months. When it was all over, we said the test was so tough, you all fail. Now we're going to take somebody who was not tested that way.
Governor,
I don't think that makes sense.
You may get that. Mathematically, you could end up in July in New York City with the Democrats, with Clinton or somebody not having enough delegates.
Unlikely, but theoretically
all right,
possible.
Let's talk about the theory of that. What would that do to the party's chances in November if all of us covered that convention and people made speeches and you had 2 or 3 ballots?
Here's what would happen, in my opinion. Great story. Boy, would John Chancellor and Myers and Russert go, especially Russert. What a story that would be. Big, big surprise. And then the next day you'd have a meeting. NBC, CBS, ABC, CNN say, this bum escaped our scrutiny for all those months. Let's get him. And you would sit down and sharpen your pencils and get to your typewriters and you'd go look up the draft records. That poor candidate would get killed in 3 weeks. This white knight would become covered with mud in record time. Why? Because your response would be, he or she escaped the primaries. We're not going to let them get away with it. And what that would be a very intelligent reaction to exactly the point I'm making. There is a system for testing them. It's why Bill Clinton is getting the piñata primary. You know, you all hit it with sticks. That's the system. To now exempt someone from it in the name of white knight pursuit will not work.
But Governor, the person you said will probably be the nominee of your party is for a middle-class tax cut. You say that's a dumb idea.
Only a middle-class tax cut. I would be for it, but you have to do a whole package.
He hasn't laid out a plan to take care of entitlements or cope with entitlements.
No one else has either in the party.
Don't you, deep down, wish you were out there right now?
Well, that's not relevant. But
but it is.
No.
I mean, people listen to your views for the last...
A nice, private personality kind of thing. It's not important. I'm not relevant, and that is not relevant. What is relevant is the message, the idea, the program, the policy. You're right, Tim, that they haven't done a lot of things, and I talked to Governor Clinton about it yesterday, and he agrees. He has these ideas. He has this plan. So does Tsongas, so does Brown. What we need now is to get one of them free to do it, to throw off all the requirements of dealing with these attacks, to be the presumptive candidate, if not the presumptive, the actual candidate. Then sit down. And let me underscore this. Not enough to do it as a candidate. Because if all they do it as a Democratic candidate is, this is the agenda, I promise you, it's only a promise. Sit down with Mitchell, Foley, make a deal right now publicly. This is not only the plan, I promise you, I have my Congress on board. They will vote for it. Here are 5 bills, not a platform, not a promise, a reality. elect me, they're in place, we have a law, in 30 days I make the country over.
We have to leave it there. Governor Cuomo, thanks for coming by. We'll be back in just a minute.
He could have had the 60-foot sailboat, the house on the 18th green. But all Ned Crowley ever really wanted was a home on the range. At Dean Witter, our retirement plans are as individual as the people who dream.
We measure success one investor at a time.
Well, boys, how do you like the new backyard?
They came from different cultures, from different worlds, to create Expo 92. To help them work together, Xerox designed the largest local area network in Europe, linking thousands of people to share ideas and create the documents that let people discover the best in each other. Putting it together. Networking, scanning, printing. Xerox, the document company.
At first, it doesn't seem to be much of a problem. A tire here, a tire there. But it all adds up to the point where Americans dispose of more than 250 million tires a year. But at the Archer Daniels Midland Company, we're doing something about it. We're taking tires that would ordinarily be an environmental problem. We're shredding them and mixing them with coal to create a fuel that burns cleaner in our power plant, providing the energy we need to produce ethanol, a gasoline additive derived from surplus cornstarch that helps reduce carbon monoxide emissions by up to 25%. So as you can see, by using a little ingenuity, we at ADM have got yet another good idea rolling. ADM, supermarket to the world.
Jack, Lisa, we're out of time. New York primary on Tuesday, a big one. That's it for today. We'll be back next week in Washington. If it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press. See you then.
Dean Witter believed one thing that should distinguish his brokers is their ability to listen.
Listen not only to what our clients say, but what they mean.
I have a vision about retirement. I know
Each client has a level of comfort.
You know me. I'm a planner.
There is no greater dividend a firm can earn than the confidence of its clients.
Help me make some good decisions.
There are many ways to measure success.
We measure success one investor at a time.
They came from different cultures, from different worlds, to create Expo 92. To help them work together, Xerox designed the largest local area network in Europe, linking thousands of people to share ideas and create the documents that let people discover the best in each other. Putting it together. Networking, scanning, printing. Xerox, the document company.
Meet the Press has been sponsored by Dean Witter. There are many ways to measure success. Dean Witter measures success one investor at a time. For a printed transcript of Meet the Press, send $1 and a stamped self-addressed envelope to Kelly Press, Box 12160, Silver Spring, Maryland, 20908.
Dateline, the National Weather Service, the source for your local forecast. A radar system behind the times.
Manufactured in 1957.
Often when killer storms lurk, America's in the dark.
People are dying every year.
No detection, no warning.
My kids are growing up without a dad.
Jane Pauley, Stone Phillips, a stunning Dateline NBC.
Will you be ready for retirement when the time comes? Do you know how to avoid taxes on your pension distribution? Will your money last? Get the answers you need from the experts at the Retirement Strategy Seminar, sponsored by DeWay & Associates. Experts in accounting, law, financial planning, nutrition, psychology, and physical therapy will make this full-day information-packed seminar the best retirement investment you'll ever make. Attend this seminar at the Metropolitan Club, downtown Des Moines on April 11th. Seating limited, so call now 224-1611.
Mama Lucona's, Italian-American food at its finest.